Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Today we are continuing our discussions of Avatar: The Last Airbender, going on a secret tunnel to reach episodes 3 and 4. I gotta say, folks, this feels... some things are still changed, some things are different. This feels to me much more like the original Avatar, and especially with the end of the last episode, episode 4, it felt to me like they kind of said, we know what the point of the original was. We're changing it a bit, but we are still keeping to, like we'd all been talking about, like, does the show understand the childlikeness of Aang? And they kind of quite literally did that at the end of episode 4. So it's still not exactly the show I would have wanted, but I'm feeling a lot more like this is now a show that I want to do, that I want to see. I have Riki and Paul with us. What do you guys think?
Well, my Iroh stocks are going up. My Aang stocks are going down, I think.
I partially feel the way you do, Matthew. I mean, I enjoyed the third and fourth episodes more than the first one.
Yeah.
Episode 3 did start with like by the way, Ozai is as awful as Sozin, and we need to graphically show you on screen by eliminating Ben Wong's character faster than American-born Chinese got canceled. But I agree that thing at the end, where Aang's kind of like, is that such a bad thing? To like, maybe you can count on your friends. Maybe you can see the world like a kid. Like, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's actually the way to move forward. And some of the whimsy and the, secret tunnel, like...
I did not think, especially after the darkness of that first episode, I didn't think we were going to get it, and I didn't think we'd get it in a way that felt true to the story instead of feeling like it was just smashed in for fan service. And I loved it. I thought it was great to have it.
Yeah, that was definitely... I kind of perked up there, I do feel like they were trying to cram 4 or 5 stories together into one.
Yes.
Yep.
And I just don't...
I believe it was literally 4 episodes.
Yeah.
4 arcs, really.
Easily. I mean, because they're already putting, Azula and Ozai on screen, and Ty Lee and May, and like, it's like, I feel like they're trying to do a lot. Like, it reminds me of the DCEU a little bit.
Yeah.
In the kind of like, just it feels like rushing, it just feels like they're rushing. But I did feel like there was more of the whimsy. There was more of the stuff I liked. I did enjoy Iroh a lot. I also feel like they're rushing with Zuko in terms of like having him kind of, have that critical moment where he goes to help Iroh instead of chasing after Aang.
Yeah, that felt way too fast.
It just feels too soon to me. It also feels like they're really trying to make sure that like we know that like not everybody, not all firebenders,
right,
and that like the Earth Kingdom also is doing bad stuff too, and that war is horrible, and it just feels like they're trying to do a lot. And I thought they got some of it. Which for me was better than the first episode for sure. The second episode, third and fourth all felt like, kind of a similar level of quality to me in terms of like, okay, like I'm into it now. I don't love it, but the performances still lots of great performances.
Agreed.
And I think that they knew that we were going to do 2 episodes at a time because the third and fourth episodes felt, paired.
I mean, it was the Omashu arc.
Yeah.
But in Omashu is the Jet arc and is the Teo and Sai arc.
And the secret tunnel arc. Right? Yeah. So it's a lot.
Let me give what is at least my understanding of the mission statement of this show, as I think it was expressed. You guys tell me if you agree with this, or you like it, or you think it's different. We talked before about how like Aang being a child, that part of it's that he hasn't learned the things that all the adults have learned, and that's a good thing, and that as will especially come up towards the end of the 3rd season. for me in this episode especially, I got the sense that they're doing something similar but a little different to that, which is that it's saying that everyone in this world has experienced 100 years of war, or has experienced war for their entire
For their whole
lives,
lives. Yeah.
which is part of 100. They're experiencing a world that's been at war for 100 years.
Yeah.
And because of that, everyone is cynical and everyone is beaten down and everyone is doing the best they can for them and theirs because they can't think about broader pictures, whether that's you're taking care of your son or taking care of your city or whatever it is. And then along comes this guy who literally hasn't lived through the last 100 years. And so because of that, hasn't had all of that trauma and all the bad things that has happened to everyone else for the last 100 years. And so he's able to kind of be the hope. He's able to be the one who's like, maybe we don't have to kill our enemies. Maybe we don't have to only look out for our own. Which feels similar to the original, but somewhat different, but in a way that to me feels at least like I at least now think that start that again. I at least now think that the creators have a clearer understanding of the original than they thought they did from episodes 1 and 2, and that they're intentionally changing it somewhat, but in a way that feels a lot more respectful.
That's a lot. Sorry.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, they keep repeating the 100 years thing.
Right.
Specifically, like characters repeating it to Aang, like you weren't here, like Bumi, just over and over. You weren't here, like I've lived for the last 100 years. You missed it all, and it feels a little like bashing over the head to me. That they're trying to drive this home to the audience and to Aang, the character. And in terms of the hope, like I agree, like hope is the message. People keep talking about hope, like our hope is return. I think the Kyoshi mayor said something about hope, like we now have hope again or something like that. But the problem I have with that message, or like what you were saying about it, Matthew, is that the character of Aang, like his personality, seems to be less of the driving force than just the fact that he's the avatar, that he's the chosen one. Like people are, their hope is being restored because the avatar is back. It's the message that I'm getting, and it doesn't seem to matter so much that it's Aang or like the things that he does matters, right? Like I think Teo says something about like now we can fight back because the avatar is back.
Right. Well, I think that's very true. I guess I think to me that's part of what the cycle he's breaking of everyone's looking to him as okay, you're the warrior, you're going to help us kill all the. Whereas he's really trying to break out. In some ways, him and Iroh having the same idea of like all of us are trapped as soldiers in this cycle that he isn't a part of.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't like that scene. The Iroh and Aang in some issues prison. With it.
Oh.
Well, let me just hear Paul on my kind of overall thought, and then let's start going on into individual characters.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I don't see it totally, but I wouldn't say like I vehemently disagree. I'm like, literally my reaction was gonna be, like, yeah, maybe, fair. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I need to see more, I need to see more. I do feel like I'm certain that the showrunner and the writer's room and producers behind the scenes and whatever have an idea of what they want to do with the series.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that idea is pretty clear because they constantly have characters saying things that are super on the nose to express a lot of that. I feel like I feel like I'm not getting that from the characters. I feel like the characters are telling me that.
Right.
In a way that, sometimes you can do that in animation in a way that just, it feels different out of a human mouth, like a physical person. Cause I'm like, I feel like I'm just tripped up by like, I feel like those aren't the ways that people use words when they're talking to other people, and that a lot of it feels very heavy handed in terms of like the gist of it, the point of it. Like I can dig it, and I can see where it's going. I'm curious to hear like what Oh, also just like very quick thing, like, yay, Aang's a vegetarian. They didn't mess that up.
I was so nervous during that scene, and I was like, this is either going to make Paul happier, or it's going to be me and Riki for the rest of the show.
And like, they finally get the little I feel like the Cabbages thing was like the kind of fan service, sort of like, we're gonna kind of tease you by not saying hello there, but like, and then finally we're gonna pay that off, but
then they went like full on con.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It was a lot.
Just like the overhead shot with the camera retreating into the sky.
Oh, so good. Made me so happy.
I wonder how that feels to someone who hasn't seen the original.
Oh, they don't get it at all.
Like,
right?
why is this guy so upset about his cabbages? Like,
and that's like the definition of fan service.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It rewards you for knowing the material.
Yes. Yeah.
There was definitely a bunch of that. And I hear what both of you are saying, and I think I could be very well wrong or just trying to hyper focus. And I will say, Riki, I feel like this episode should be the culmination of the frustration and anger that people have towards him because he was theoretically gone for 100 years. Like,
I feel like we're gonna get it again, though. Like, he's gonna go to the Northern Water Tribe, and they're gonna say, like, we've been at war for 100 years. Where were you, Avatar? Like, I don't know.
I hope not, but you could
maybe
be right.
It's the fact that it is condensed, right? Like a 20 episode season is being condensed into 8, and they're like smushing these storylines. Yeah. So without, what we call filler, without an episode, you're going to miss some of the whimsy, probably.
Yeah. Yep.
And every episode, someone has to say 100 years of war.
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's condensed in terms of number of episodes, but it's not that condensed in terms of runtime.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? But
yeah, it's more like 16 to 18 episodes in terms of runtime.
Yeah, but it does, because of the way episodes are structured, you have fewer. There's a lot of just compact a little story you can tell in one animated episode, right?
Yeah.
And I think the original series does a lot of that in a way that really serves the gradual development of characters in a way that is just very. I think it's harder. It's different when you just have fewer episodes, even if it's the same runtime. It's like, it's not kind of just coming back to this, just touching on something and then waiting a couple episodes, touching on it and waiting. It's like here, it's like, well, if you want to touch on it 8 times, you either got to do it in every episode or you've got to do it multiple times in an episode. Whereas when it's over 20, you could do it once and then wait a couple, then again, okay, wait a couple, then again and again. And it's like, I don't know. I just think the rhythm is very different.
And it's weird because the cabbage seller, right, is kind of the epitome of that.
Yes.
The fact that we had, I think there were 2 teases of him like showing up and like starting to say, like, would you like to try my? And like, no.
Yeah.
But then we got the Khan yell, and then at the end when Bumi crashes the cart, we hear it again.
Right.
And in the original, it was like over the course of multiple episodes.
Yeah, it was like a running gag.
Spaced like 3 or 4 episodes apart. Like, he's in a completely different city. So I, like the pacing and it's very off to me. And that the Cabbages is a weird way to kind of symbolize that.
Yeah.
No, I see that. I want to get more into this. I just want to pause for a quick second to say we've already gotten 2 emails from fans that we're going to be discussing. One of them is specifically about episodes 5 and 6. The other was specifically about episode 8. And so I just want to encourage listeners, if you haven't yet, if you have thoughts about this, thoughts about what we're saying, questions you want us to discuss, comments, ways you think we're totally wrong, find us. You can find us on social media by looking for The Ethical Panda. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can also email us directly, Matthew@theethicalpanda.com. And of course, one of the best ways to support what we're doing is to become a member. For only $5 a month or $55 a year, you get bonus content, not on these episodes because we're putting these out so fast, but on most episodes, you get ad-free content, and you're also going to get full bonus episodes. And you can find out all of that by going to www.theethicalpanda.com. So why don't we start looking at individual characters and stories? Because, and you brought up Iroh, Riki, I felt super up and down about Iroh. There were some, well, actually, let me back that up a bit. There were some parts of Iroh's story that were just incredibly heart-wrenching and beautiful. The scene where he's talking about his dead son. Did you guys catch that the music they were playing
Oh
Yeah.
is
yeah,
the same
leaves
Yeah.
on the
tune?
vine.
Yeah, that was I had goosebumps tearing up.
And that scene, okay, so that scene really worked for me.
Mhm.
Not just like because of Paul Sun Lee's performance, like mostly saying nothing, but just the anguish on his face and the tear drop. But Zuko, like that was a really interesting Zuko scene
Yeah.
that we got, and I felt like it was a good addition. Like that's one of the few scenes that they've added here that I was like, oh yeah, okay, like that makes Zuko his progression better, smoother. I felt,
Yeah.
and makes their relationship work a lot better
Yeah.
in this version.
Yeah, I feel like it really adds like depth and context to their relationship.
Mhm.
And then the scene where he's getting on the boat and he's like, "Everything I need is here," you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many
Um,
Star Wars lines.
um, and it 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 feels to me like something I feel like in terms of story structure, I probably would rather see that later in terms
Mhm.
of actually feeling the kind of arc of Zuko. But if you're gonna have the arc, if you're gonna kind of try and get people to like Zuko earlier instead of having him be just kind of like annoying and loud and then you come around to understanding where he comes from, I think it's
Mhm.
very effective. So I think
Yeah.
clearly if you're gonna rush an arc, at least like do it with like great scenes like those, I
Yeah.
think is what I would say.
Agreed. What
I don't
what
I
to
don't
me
feel like it was rushed. That's the thing.
No,
Like,
well, but it's rushed in terms of like it coming so early in season 1, I think is what Paul is saying.
yeah,
Like we
I
haven't
okay.
really had that much time to see Zuko being so obsessed with the Avatar that
yeah,
he'll do
I
anything
guess
if he's already.
to sort of amend what I mean, instead of maybe rushing, if you're going to do something faster than you did in the original show, doing it faster and well, like they have done with that, I think is a good choice. Other things like introducing Ozai and Azula faster in scenes that they added, that I
Yeah,
did not like,
I
and I
same
Yeah.
same.
and so I feel like adding more Zuko and Iroh earlier, I like and appreciate. Maybe they feel like if we're gonna make these two firebenders, who are kind of the main Fire Nation characters we see in the first season, if we're gonna make them more sympathetic, then maybe they feel like therefore we need to introduce the very unsympathetic Fire Nation
Right.
characters faster
But
to
we
kind
already
of
have
counterbalance that.
Zhao,
I don't know. I know
Yeah.
we do.
and
Yeah.
We
he's
do.
he's a great character and like
He
great
is a great
acting. Like
Yeah.
character. Yes.
probably
Well.
probably my favorite of the performances, really.
Yeah, me
Mhm.
Thus
too.
far.
Well, and if I can just stay on Iroh for a second, when I said I felt kind of ups and downs because those moments were perfect. There were other moments that felt off to me, but I wonder if it's because we're going in a direction that Riki, you had actually talked about. During Iroh's confrontation with the Earth Nation soldier, I was surprised that Iroh wasn't more contrite and kind of apologetic.
Mm.
Learning that this guy's brother had died in an attack that Iroh had led. I think Iroh clearly feels bad for him and has regrets, but he pointedly doesn't apologize, and you know goes to saying like, I think you're just as bad now in terms of the hate you feel.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Riki, you've talked a couple of times about that you would have liked to see more of the journey Iroh takes to get to be this sort of wonderfully, I want to say Zen, that's not the right word, obviously, but that kind of like he has come to peace, he's come to terms with his past. This scene makes me wonder if we're actually going to get some of that journey, because this is Iroh is not quite to the place he gets to in the show that we saw before of really being at peace with, what he has done and his role in it and the need to do better.
Yes. So I agree with you. Well, I mean, I'm agreeing with you that I said that. But
Yes,
here,
that
no,
is
here.
accurate.
Let me try to explain. When we first meet Iroh in the animated show, I feel like his journey, like emotional journey, is largely complete, right?
Right.
And what we are getting is him trying to give the lessons that he's learned to Zuko.
Right.
In this show, it feels different. And that, what I said earlier, like, I did not like the additional scene of Iroh and Aang in the Earth prison together, because it it mirrors the scene where Aang was a prisoner on the fire ship, and they have a conversation where Aang is like lecturing slash like trying to convince Iroh that the war is wrong, and
Mm.
I I don't want that. Iroh should already know that the war is wrong. Like, that's how he should start this series because of his backstory. So I don't. I know it's Avatar and it's Aang's show, but I do not like this version where Aang is teaching Iroh this lesson, because
Mm.
I feel like he's already been there. So I'm very wary of where this is going
Yeah.
in
Well,
that sense.
what was your take on his conversation with the Earth soldier?
Yeah, I mean, the my take is that I agree with you on that. Definitely, like, that he's still not there yet. Like, he had the conversation with Aang, he had the conversation with Earth Soldier. He keeps spitting the company or the Fire Nation line, right? Like, I
Right.
was just a soldier, like, I was doing my job, like, we're both doing our jobs. And yeah, like, that to me is like the biggest problem I'm having right now with Iroh, is that his character is fundamentally different in that sense, that he's
Yeah.
in a different point of development. But I'm enjoying the performance more now. Like, from the first two episodes to 3 and 4, like, I'm definitely coming around on the performance and how he's being portrayed. I don't like where the writing is taking the character.
Yeah. That's fair.
Kind of like it's a version of the character that isn't the version you want to see, but it's like well done
Yeah,
within
yeah.
what
Yeah.
the choices they've made. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, I I think it's interesting to see how much bitterness he has towards the Earth Kingdom, as particularly like its military,
Mm-hmm.
and it's,
Yeah.
the Earth Kingdom is not known for being merciful to its prisoners. Like, it almost sounds like his son didn't fall in battle, like he was captured and then, murdered,
Mm.
basically,
Yeah.
which would be, I guess, an interesting way to tell the story. Not the way that I would, but like it it feels it feels different for sure. And I really feel like they are trying to make the Earth Kingdom feel less sympathetic, and have like have Iroh still like be angry at them and see them as a military still as the enemy, and have this bitterness towards them, while not necessarily having that bitterness towards the people of the Earth
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom, and
Yeah.
kind of maybe being able to sort the militaries from the people, but basically being like, hey, when I was born, this war was going on. Our
Mm-hmm.
countries have been at war for literally my entire life. 100 years, in case anybody
Yeah.
forgets how long it's been. And we just I was born the Fire Prince, and I was supposed to do this thing, and so I did this thing, and like, what do you want? And then I
Yeah.
stopped doing the thing, and it seems like the story here is that, like, he stopped doing the thing because he decided, because he like lost his taste for it because his son died, right? Which
Right.
is kind of the original story, except I think in the original story it's more that his son dying maybe personalized the loss and the devastation and tragedy of war, and that he had all of these.
Right.
And the first conversation he had with Aang made it feel like he had come around to that, and when he was saying, some say this, it's in our nature to consume everything, some people say this, but he didn't say what he thought. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was thinking that meant that he thought what the Iroh in the animated series thinks, which is like, we shouldn't be doing this war anymore, but I can't stop it myself. So I'm going to try and guide my nephew in a direction where I think he'll be a happier, more, constructive person in the world, where maybe he can then do something, and,
Right.
we'll kind of see how it all plays out. Whereas here, I feel like it's more of a kind of, he's still in that kind of questioning where, like,
Yeah.
he knows what people say, and he knows that he doesn't agree with it deeply, but also it doesn't feel like he is opposed to it and like part of a secret organization, and like,
Mm-hmm.
like there's certain things that happen later down the road in the series that here feel like, has this Iroh already been it does. I feel like including those elements later, which I won't deeply spoil, but like there's some things that we learn about Iroh in season 2, season 3, or whatever of the animated series, that if we learn those about him, that those are already true. I don't understand kind of how this version of
Yeah.
Iroh matches those facts that we know come to learn about him
Yeah.
Mhm.
in the
No,
animated series.
I think you're right. And I think, like I said, I think if we watch him become the Iroh who he is at the start of the series, it's very different, but I think that could be very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But then I need to know that, yeah, he hasn't been doing the things that Iroh would have done.
Right.
One thing I thought was also very interesting and just kind of gave an interesting new twist on it, and maybe you all saw it already there in the animated, but I feel like it's being added here. When he has that last conversation with Zuko, that's a flashback to when Zuko was freshly wounded and was on the boat and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Leaves on the Trees started playing again,
Yeah.
which I've always seen it that Zuko is looking to Iroh as a father figure because he has very recently lost his father. Um, I never thought of it as Iroh, because of the loss of his son, kind of wanting a surrogate son in the same way that Zuko wants a surrogate father. But this time I did, especially with the playing of that song. To me, was kind of a like, not in any kind of like needy or unhealthy way, but that for both of them, there is this loss in their life that they are looking to each other to help have a similar relationship. Which just, it makes it more of a, instead of, again, like Iroh being at peace and Zuko looking to him, it's how are they both going to help each other towards peace. Which, on the one hand, like, if you told me that one of the things that a modern version of something that was a remake of something from 20 years ago was going to do was to say that all the characters are on a journey to find peace instead of some of them actually are there already, I would say, yep, that sounds exactly like what a more grimdark version has to be. But yeah, because like the first time I saw that, I was like, no, Iroh wouldn't say that, and then it was like, okay, no, maybe Iroh would say this, or at least this version of Iroh. And then it's a question of like, do we want to see this version of Iroh or not? And I think that's all positions on that are perfectly valid.
It's weird
Yeah.
because I would be I will be satisfied at the end of all this with Iroh because it's a wonderful character. I don't think they can like deviate that far from the script, so to speak. But and like I don't know, like did I need this? Did I need to watch Iroh go through the story? Again, like I don't think so because
Yeah.
this is very much about Zuko going through that journey, right?
Right.
And we talked previously in our like recap about what made that so satisfying was that Zuko himself like goes through his ups and downs and back up again, right? And then so Iroh was like always his constant. He came into that series knowing who he was, knowing what he had to do for Zuko. Kind of like for me like Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New
Mm-hmm.
Hope and in like all of the preamble material that we're getting, right? Between episodes 3 and 4, Obi-Wan Kenobi was like sitting in a desert for 15 years, but his mission was clear. He was like, I failed, the Jedi failed. I have to like watch over Luke and help him. do the thing. And to me, that's Iroh. Like, he comes in, he's like, I failed. I failed my nation. I failed my son.
Yeah.
I have to help Zuko. And
Yeah.
this Iroh, in the live action Iroh we're getting, like, it's unclear that he
Yeah.
understands that. Like, he's like you've been saying, like, he still feels like he is caught up in the war mode.
Yeah.
And is caught up in still being a general.
I will say, I do think that I do agree with Paul what you said earlier about the Earth Kingdom being presented a little less sympathetically. But and I want to kind of you guys to check me on this because this might be my own internal bias. I come from a place that, you know, yes, when terrible things are done to people and then people do terrible things in response, like we get into a cycle where both sides are doing bad things. But for me, I'm almost never going to believe, like, therefore both sides are equally bad in a situation where there's a clear aggressor and a clear, like, person being oppressed and fighting back against it. And it felt to me, particularly because it felt to me like we were supposed to think Iroh was not really being fair with some of what he said, that I felt much more sympathetic to the Earth Soldier than I did to Iroh in that moment, and felt like I felt sorry for him that he has clearly gone that far into hate as well, and that's bad, and that the Earth, like, what has happened to the Earth Kingdom is bad. But to me, I didn't get to a place of Earth Kingdom is as bad as the Fire Nation. That one is the aggressor and the other is going in bad directions in response to that aggression.
Yeah, I guess I don't really see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I hear where you're coming from, but I just thought, the Earth Kingdom soldier was just like a douche. I mean, and I understand the idea of like the aggressor in a war, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that ever really. I don't care like who's worse. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like an important question to me. It's
Yeah,
like
I agree.
if we just look at like World War II and like if we specifically focus on like the US and Japan, like
Mm-hmm.
I I don't care who was worse. Like I know Japan was initially the aggressor against, the
Mm-hmm.
like Imperial Japan specifically against like other, parts of Asia, right? And then Pearl Harbor or whatever. But like, I mean, that doesn't make the actions of the United States like not unconscionable. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things to me where it's just like, yeah, like even contemplating like better or worse, it's like I don't care. Like just unacceptable,
Mm-hmm.
and like if it's literally something that's happening while defending one's home, it's like it feels a little different, right? But
Right.
like that's not what this is. It's like some guy got locked up and he's going to be sent to a labor camp to like slave away till he dies. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like kicking him on the way. Like that's malice and bitterness and an extremely it's a harmful reaction. Like people respond differently to horrible things happening to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel like because something horrible happened to you and somebody else was a part of that exonerates any sense of guilt or responsibility or whatever. I it's like it's a little, especially because like the Earth Kingdom is so powerful and actually, as we come to learn, like quite oppressive at the same time. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
Omashu isn't so much that way, but like
Yeah, we've got a lot to say about
there,
Passing Say that we
there's a
haven't
lot
happened
going
yet,
on.
but
Yeah. We don't we
I
don't have
mean,
to get dig in there,
quick
and I suppose we might
aside,
not get there, but yeah.
I don't understand the structure of the Earth Kingdom and why Bumi is a king, because there's also the Earth King in Bossing Say.
Right.
So I'm just like, I don't understand how the politics of this nation works.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Besides that point,
right.
I the conversation between Iroh and the Earth Kingdom soldier, I often use the phrase manipulative. Like
Mhm.
that felt very manipulative on the part of the writers. where the
That's
soldier
fair.
like tells this story, like, my
Mhm.
brother, you killed my brother, like he burned, like I can't stand the smell of smoke or whatever, I still smell smoke. You don't know what loss is, and then immediately cut to, right, like the Liu Ten
Yeah.
funeral
Yeah.
with the exposition dump of the people whispering like he just lost his son in the siege.
Yeah.
That, like Paul has mentioned, the writing, I felt like that was a good scene, but the writing, like, to get to that point with the Earth Kingdom soldier and the exposition from the attendee of the funeral was
Yeah.
like a little manipulative. So I didn't enjoy
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's
And if
fair.
that scene had been bad, it would have been brutal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're going here now?" And then I was like, oh, "Okay, but
Then they make you cry.
Yeah.
yeah. I was like,
Here
okay,
turns out a good place to go. Yeah.
Oh,
I
we're
think it's fair.
going here now.
And I think what
But-
you're saying, Paul, is fair. I think, like, yeah, it's not really about who is worse. It's weird because it's like it's not that I want to engage in who is worse, but that I do think that often when the outsider perspective can be, oh, they're both equally as bad, that I find just as problematic. And
Yeah, I agree with you that, like, that's not, like, I'm not interested in who's worse, but saying that they're the same and equal, I think it's harmful and
Yeah.
like wrong, but also kind of irrelevant. It's like, why even say that? Just say that they're both bad. Don't say that they're equal.
The lesson in these stories is that someone has to stop the cycle, right? And in this version, what we are given, Iroh stops the cycle, where he, Zuko helps him escape, and he has the Earth Kingdom soldier on the ground and says something like, we've all seen enough death, right?
Yeah.
Which is, like, it was okay, but again, like, it still felt a little aggressive for Iroh.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm not sure where this character is at.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Well, especially because, to me, like, yeah, I think it was retracing.
Yeah, he's probably not where the animated character was.
He sounded bitter, and again, like, I think it was performed well, but it's just like, that's not where I want this character to be right now.
Yeah. Do you know Paul Sun-Hyung Lee's screen name on, like, everything?
Oh yeah.
Bitter Asian dude.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. What'd you guys then think of Jet and his portrayal in this? Because it did feel like he. Well, I don't want to spoil my own thing. What would you guys think of how Jet was portrayed?
I mean, it was okay. He's got the smolder. This guy, what's his name? Let me get his name real quick.
He looks like the part so much. It's like,
Sebastian
that guy's Jet.
Amoruso. Like, even his, like, profile pic in the cast listing, like, he's got a smolder. Oh my gosh. Does. So
I want to talk to him for a second, but just on that note, I will say the acting, like I was saying before, I didn't think that Katara had much acting to do. I thought the way the actress portrayed Katara kind of fangirling hard for this guy, but then the moment he crossed the line as she said it, she was just like, nope, I'm done with you. Like, I disagree with her, but I thought that was very real to her character and very well portrayed by her.
Yeah, I'm starting to come around on her performance. Her name, so I believe it starts with a K, but I've listened to interviews and I believe it's pronounced Giondio. So yeah, I started off a Sokka fan. I'm coming around on Katara, although the two of them, the argument they had in the secret tunnel was, I don't know, like,
that
kind of
felt very manipulative.
Cringy to me.
Yeah. Well, so what do we think of Jet, though?
I thought that they were deliberately trying to make Jet less sympathetic in terms of his aims and goals. But I feel like that's not what... I mean, because he's literally trying to blow up, like, a bunch of people, right? And I don't know.
Oh, interesting. I had the exact opposite reaction.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I felt that he was much more sympathetic and much more
than in the animated series.
Because I feel less sympathetic for
me. Me too.
In this one.
Yeah. So where are you with that, Matthew? Like, where's
I mean, again, I'm viewing all this through the lens of everything happening in the world right now, and
Right,
just my
right.
general sense of like, anytime you call somebody a terrorist, especially when they're like the one fighting against oppression, I'm like, come on. But like to me, it felt like in that one, he wanted to kill a whole bunch of civilians, like a whole town's worth of civilians.
Yeah.
Here, he was targeting specific buildings where I think there was like one or two people being hurt at a time. And then he was trying to target someone who was like a legitimate spy that was, hurting their city. And seeing things through a very problematic lens where he sees that everybody who is connected to this person is also therefore corrupt and bad and terrible and thus must die, which I think we're supposed to disagree with. But he felt like a freedom fighter. And not to get us off into a completely different discussion, he felt to me a lot like Saw Gerrera or Lucian from Star Wars. Like Saw Gerrera is from all the things, and Lucian is specifically from Andor. But like he felt like someone who was doing what he thought was needed to fight, the oppressors. And I disagree with him to some extent. But whereas to me, Jet in the animated just hates Fire Nation people and wants to kill them for vengeance. Here it felt like he had a specific idea of this will help us to win the war in a strategic way. Like, I hate Lucian and I hate what Lucian wants to do, but I agree with him that I'm not sure unless Lucian did what he does, we get Luke Skywalker. And I think that's what makes Andor so brilliant, is it raises those kind of questions. And I don't think Jet needs to do what he does, but I believe that Jet believes that he needs it. And to me, that makes him much more sympathetic than the version in the animated.
Okay. In the animated, if I'm trying to recall, he was going to blow up a dam.
Yep.
Because he wanted to wipe out a Fire Nation encampment of soldiers.
And it was also going to wipe out a village.
But as a consequence, there was also a village of Earth Kingdom people that was also going to get wiped out.
Was it Earth Kingdom people, or was it a Fire Nation colony?
I don't know. I felt like it was like his people, right? And he's presumably from the Earth Kingdom.
Yeah, I think it was his people.
There were civilians.
Right.
Is the point. So, like, in this one, his goal is to assassinate the king, right? Of his own nation. And that's why, like, I feel like he's less sympathetic here. I agree with what you said. In the animated, he hates the Fire Nation, and that's why he's doing what he's doing, and he doesn't care about the consequences and the collateral damage. In this one, okay, like, he still hates the Fire Nation because, like, his little band is like, we're all orphans because of the Fire Nation. And then he chooses to try to assassinate his own king because, like, he has this twisted view of politics and corruption. And that's what I don't understand his motives. I think he's just like a misguided idiot kid in this one. So
I thought it was pretty clear. I thought that he thinks the king is collaborating with the enemy.
Oh, I did not think that. I thought that
he thinks the Mechanist is collaborating. Well, he knows the Mechanist is collaborating.
Yeah,
and because the Mechanist is meeting with the king, like, he jumps to this conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even feel that was his conclusion. He thought that the king was just like old and feeble-minded and didn't know what was going on in his own city and wasn't going to do anything about it. And he basically just wanted to affect political change, which, okay. I mean, if there was more, I don't know. I think the difference for me was that here he's like, I am going to blow up those people. Those people, I'm going to specifically murder them, right? As opposed to, I'm going to blow up a dam and it might kill a bunch of people, but and that might be worse in terms of the outcome, but it feels less personal, it feels less like I am deliberately killing those people. And there's just something specific about that, like, maybe it's not worse, but it feels different to me.
I think I've like mathed it out in my head. Like, his goal is he's trying to assassinate the king, like, yes, his own king, but they have been making it look like it's the Fire Nation, right? Because that's why they're using bombs.
Right, yeah.
So they are trying to frame the Fire Nation for a
Yeah.
political assassination.
Yeah. It's basically like a false flag thing, right?
Mhm.
Like,
And that and Matthew, like, that's why I feel he's less sympathetic here, because there's more of a deliberateness to it, like a misguided, in my opinion, misguided deliberateness. Whereas in the animated, like, it just felt like he was acting out of anger.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think we just had very different views of how it happened then, because I saw what he was wanting very differently.
I do think that he has made his mind a sunless space. I'll agree with that. Oh, you don't remember the monologue? Okay, it was just the best monologue in the history of Star Wars, but that's fine. Never mind.
That's from Andor?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
It is a good monologue.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Can we at least say I thought his fighting scenes and the way they did, like, the double sword hooking together was really badass. Like, I love that.
Yeah, the action continues to be top notch. The Iroh rescue scene. What's his name? Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Zuko's character.
Dallas Liu.
I mean, his acting is also good, but if he got cast just because of how he does the spin kicks, like, I'm okay with that. Dude.
Yeah. No, he can move. He can move. Yeah.
And when Paul Sung-Young Kim had to do his version of, like, I was like, okay, yeah, that really makes sense. Like, the way he kind of, like, watching him summon this power through his movement felt, to a non-martial artist like me at least, very believable.
Yeah. He can move too. But it's funny because Dallas Liu is, like, almost the only character in Shang-Chi who doesn't, like, do martial arts in the movie. And then here he's in this, and I'm like, oh, he's also, like, an awesome actor.
I mean, maybe the actor hung out with the others and, like, screw it, and has been doing martial arts.
It's like, hey.
Maybe he'll be in the sequel.
Yeah.
Wait, what sequel?
Maybe.
What do you think of? We talked about them being introduced, and we don't love how they're being introduced, but just in terms of them as characters, what'd you think of Azula and her girl gang? Azula, Mai Li, and Mei.
Ty Lee.
Ty Lee, thank you.
My one-word conclusion is no. My longer conclusion is too early, and I don't know what's going on with this. And oh my gosh, you Fire Nation, resistance fighters don't even know what your princess looks like. What was that?
That was really, oh man.
What was that?
I was really, like, when I saw Ben Wong, who plays the leader of them, I was like, oh, he's in this too. Like, I don't even know who this character is. And I'm like, wait, they're Fire Nation? Which I think, to me, underscored the idea that they really want to show that, like, not everyone in the Fire Nation is like in favor of the war, which is cool. Right. I also feel like too soon. Like, I don't want to know that yet. I do know that, but, like, I feel like it's okay to, and I think that's something that was so powerful about the original, is, like, that you get to feel like these are the bad guys, they're the villains, and then over time you understand it's just a nation of people whose military and government have been doing horrible things, have been, perpetrating this awful war of conquest, but the country is just a bunch of people, and I think trying to show that too early, to me, it's like, obviously they're just trying to do something different, and, like, we'll see, but I was kind of like, so he's the lead of American Born Chinese, and, like, which I think is a great show that got canceled after its first season. It's on Disney if you want to watch it. And it, and he's not going to be in any more episodes of this show, So I was like, oh, although I think he's got some gigs lined up that,
Look, if you wanted to come in and shoot one or two scenes, fine. But
sure, yeah. But, like, Azula, I was also like, what's she doing here yet? I wasn't feeling the character. I feel like I want the actress who played Suki to also play Azula.
Yeah.
I actually thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow,
To,
that's
to,
interesting.
Wow.
to me, there's two things. One is I do totally agree these characters being brought in much too soon, in part because it already starts the idea that Zuko isn't as bad. Whereas
Right. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
season one, Zuko is our primary antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
with Zhao coming up behind him.
Right.
And then that starts to give you the idea. And then, like in season two, it's like, oh, wait, now here's Azula. And then season three, it's like, oh, wait, here's Ozai.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still mostly Azula. And so, yeah, it feels way too soon to be seeing so much of Ozai. But also, and Mary, my heart and I were talking about this a lot. I think Azula and Ty Lee and may be the hardest characters to translate from animation to live action. You know, because in the animation, they feel very over the top. They feel not in a weird way, but like in the way that an animated character who's a teenager but clearly has this understanding, like they were sexy in a way. Like, you know, the camera was focusing on Ty Lee, like kicking all over the place and things like that, in ways that a lot of bad animation makes very uncomfortable. I think this show did very well, but not even just that specifically, but just like they were so over the top. They were so kind of bigger than life in some ways that I just don't know you can get with real actresses. Real act.
With meat puppets.
Yeah, with human beings, where you know, and again, because the show is supposed to be more realistic in that way. You know, we don't see when a character gets really angry, we don't have the like classic animation, like all the lines behind them get squiggly as their eyes bust out. You know, we don't have and I feel like Ty Lee, May, Azula feel the most sort of that kind of a world, you know?
I don't know. Like I don't know what these actors can do, like in terms of physical performance. So, like I was saying, like if Dallas can spin kick, then
Yeah.
maybe these actresses can do some fancy spin kicks and like. But Ty Lee does a lot of like acrobatic stuff, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
And there may be like some stunt performers like mixed in, right? Like
Well,
stunt
to be clear,
doubles. So
it's not that I think the actors can't do the physicality of it. It's that I felt that the characters were very over the top in a way that I don't know if you can do with humans instead of animation.
I guess I feel like I didn't feel that way so much. I also I don't know if I'm alone, but I didn't feel like any of the characters in the animated show were like sexy. I don't know. Like that just didn't feel like part of the show to me. You know, it's like there were like romances, but they weren't like steamy romances. It was like
it's the wrong word, but I feel like
I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm saying that's my feeling. That's my subjective experience.
I will say I know an awful lot of people who watched I know an awful lot of people who watched the show as kids.
Yeah.
And had a lot of awakening feelings watching the three of them.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
You know, I mean it more in that way, not in a way that like I think adults look at and are like, oh, that's hot, but just in a like it's that aspect to the characters that I just think doesn't translate well.
But I think that's just television. And that's just like animated television, right?
Yeah.
Like take the Justice League. Wonder Woman is always running or flying around in her outfit, which is like presumably sexy. But I don't think as adults we look at that and go like, "Oh yeah, like
right."
No, and to be, I'm not. I think that was the wrong word to use because we're getting hung up on that. I'm not at all saying that they should be sexier. I'm saying they all felt fairly flat to me. They didn't feel like. Okay, that's also a horrible.
No, I was trying not to say anything.
I'm going to cut that out. Their characterizations all felt very like.
Yeah.
They weren't larger than life.
Right.
You saying the live action ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got like less than a minute of the three of them.
Yeah.
Which you get like it. So we're like complaining that it's too soon. They didn't really give us much.
No,
but at this point, it is the suggestion that they are bigger players in what's going on in this season, I think is what we're getting at. Because specifically, like at the end, I think at the end of episode 4, Azula is writing back to Commander Zhao, and is kind of like setting him up to
Right.
take over and betray Zuko, right? Which was not
Mhm.
a part of the original. So like in the
No.
original, the animated series, I recently rewatched it, and in season 1, Azula does not have any speaking lines, and she
Right.
only appears in the background of the flashbacks,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but is like very sinister looking. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there she is.
And I think like the last scene, right, of the
Yeah,
season
I think
even,
so. I think it was
like
like the villain, like next season villain reveal. Like now
exactly.
it's my
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Which is
Definitely.
like it was a great reveal and a great
Mhm.
kind of like setup of anticipation for the next
Yeah.
season. So again,
Yeah.
like that's what I think we're all feeling is like, why are we
Yeah.
doing it this way
Well, and
and
that
setting
reminds me
her
of
up?
another thing I was going to say about that, which is that I think because all of the stuff of the actual Fire Nation was kept off screen, the whole time that Zuko and Iroh are going back and forth about like, does my father hate me, or will he ever give me a chance, or won't he ever give me a chance? All we know is what Iroh and Zuko are saying. And
Yes.
so when Zuko actually thinks about going back, we are just as confused as he is because we haven't seen it. Whereas in this, it's like, nope. Ozai is very clearly a horrible person. Zuko, you should never ever think about going back.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
your
exactly.
family's full of vipers. Your sister wants to kill you. Your father's terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
And the
if
way that they filmed Ozai, I mean, drew Ozai in season 1 of the animated show, like it's a lot. I don't remember if they showed his face
Yeah, I
I
feel
don't
either.
like
think
they
so.
Like it
didn't.
was a lot of like from behind, like on his throne, like the
Yeah,
Yeah,
flames all around him, and so yeah, like it's a very different Ozai portrayal here as well.
yeah,
for sure. And I feel like it's too soon. I don't like what I've seen so far. I'm willing to give it some time because they just haven't had much screen time. You
yeah.
know, I trust that Daniel Day Kim can do a good job of a lot of the part if they give him lines and actions that
Mm-hmm.
are good, and in terms of Azula and Tylee and May, like we'll see. Like we got more than I wanted at this point, but again, not very much.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I, I guess I I don't have the same feeling about them being kind of larger than life in the animated. I feel like everybody's larger than life in the animated series in a
Yeah.
way, right? And I can see how they could pull it off. I mean, I know
Mm-hmm.
people who can like walk on their hands and do a bunch of Ty Lee stuff, and but then
Yeah,
combine that with like a bubbly personality and the ability to then eventually maybe show
yeah,
another side of her. Like that sounds difficult. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a challenge, but I thought Zuko was going to be one of the hardest characters to pull off, and I think so far they've done a great job. As
yeah.
He's doing it.
and I thought Zhao was one of the least interesting characters in the first season of the original, and like here, I think it's maybe the most compelling performance. I'm like, oh, like, and it's not even like it's just like the delivery. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
Ken Leung is like doing a great job with the character and
He
like
he
giving us
is,
more
He really is.
than was on
and
the page.
I think that may make it a little more disappointing as well when we get to the end of his arc.
Mm,
If he's being manipulated by Azula, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what
we'll see.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the actress portraying May completely nailed that complete deadpan
Yeah, the
voice.
Mhm.
voice for sure, for sure. I
Yeah,
didn't even see
I
her
was like,
face. I heard her
yes,
voice. I'm like, that's May.
yeah,
Hear
yeah.
May.
That's fair. That's fair.
this affected just like talking like this, like oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh,
Yeah.
perfect.
I will also say, they shoved in way too many storylines in episodes 3 and 4, but I was so glad that they included Say and Teo, the mechanist and his son,
Mm,
because
yeah.
first of all, because like this just continues to be a great time for representation as disabled folks. Like here you have a character who is in a wheelchair for unspecified reasons. The mechanist is able to use the kind of like crazy science and air stuff to make his wheelchair fly, but it is still very much a wheelchair, and Aang has to push it at one point. And so again, this fits for me the disability in science fiction-y magic-y worlds, but it doesn't erase the disability. but also just their characterizations were great. And I loved the TV show Community, and I loved the character of Abed. And I should have looked up the name of the actor.
Danny Pudi.
Danny Pudi, thank you. I've seen him play a number of roles since then where he's basically playing other versions of Abed. And so to see him play something so different and to play like what's not a huge role, but is one of the real emotional centers of this particular arc, and to play it with so much humanity. Like, I think we can judge him, but I didn't for a moment not feel sympathetic to him. I felt very like this is a man in an impossible situation. I don't want to. I wish he had made a better choice, but I can't swear that I would make a better choice in his position, which is to me like exactly the acting you need from that. And I was just, and I loved the kid who's playing Teo, and I just everything about those two and the role they played made me really happy.
Yeah, I'll just co-sign that. I'm not sure how much I have to add, but like
Yeah.
I do agree that like they shoved a lot of stuff in, but like they did those two characters well, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm very glad that those characters are in the story. I hope they continue be into in the story as you know at least as much as they were in the original series, and yeah, it's interesting because like he and Sai and Jet, right, were both.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were both.
Yeah, I think they're supposed to mirror each other.
Yeah, basically, right. And for some reason, I found him more. More relatable, and maybe it has to do with the performance, maybe it's the dialogue, I'm not sure, you know, but maybe it's just my own sort of tendencies.
Well, he was in his view, he was collaborating with the Fire Nation to forestall an invasion, right?
Right.
Because he says like, as long as I pass information along to them, they won't attack.
Right. So he's
what he's not telling himself is I'm helping them attack other people so they don't attack us. Like I think he's putting in self-denial to some extent, but yeah, he has a noble goal. As he said.
Yeah, and it feels to me like he's kind of lying to himself about that, right?
Yeah,
like he's basically trying to be like, okay, I'm just gonna keep my head down and protect myself, protect my son, and protect my city to the meager amount that I can, and just kind of try not to worry about the consequences of that because you know this is I have to do this, and but yeah, I really enjoyed his interaction with Sokka as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like we haven't talked about Sokka much, but I felt like we got a lot more of the Sokka engineer angle here, like which did exist, but maybe that is a like subtle direction, a subtle different direction that they can take things in and add that to his character more, because I don't think it was mentioned very much after the meeting between these characters originally.
Yeah, he was more like the plan guy. Well, I mean, there's at least one thing that he designed.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fair.
That was kind of
big deal. That comes across much later, but yeah, he plays a big role. And what do y'all think of Bumi?
Fun, I guess. That's the main thing.
He was definitely in the episode. I mean, I guess I didn't have really strong opinions. I kept kind of trying to square, like, having seen the Bumi felt like a character and this story arc that was one of the hardest things for me to kind of square with the animated series, you know. And like they had a statue of Flopsy, right? But they're like, we're not going to have Aang fighting a giant rabbit. Like we're not going to do that in the live action. Okay. And the sort of thing at the end where he's like, you know, you have to make a choice, you have to kill me, this or that, blah blah blah. It felt very different to me. I don't remember whether he was quite that kind of harsh in the original, but it felt different to me. It felt more,
that confrontation felt stronger here.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think in the original, he already thinks that what Aang is doing is good. He's happy to see Aang,
Yeah.
but he wants
Yeah.
Aang to be the best avatar I can be.
Yeah.
In this, it feels like his frustration and his bitterness towards Aang
Yes.
is more what's coming out. And I felt like that was I felt like that was a choice that I was very okay with, because it felt again like they're trying to tell a somewhat different kind of a story. And it is more grimdark, because I guess everything has to be more grimdark now. And I don't, if you told me at the beginning this was going to be a more grimdark version of Avatar, I'd been like, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
But now that I know what we're getting, I actually thought it worked really well, because I did think that was the episode where I was really like, okay, this gets the whimsy. Like there were so many of the Bumi moments, like the bad jokes and the things like that were so perfect to the original.
What do you mean bad jokes?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Dad jokes. But then that moment of him saying, like, you have to choose, to me, I don't want to spoil too much. It feels like it very much foreshadows a significant part of Aang's journey towards the end, where he is told multiple times, being the Avatar means you have to make these hard choices and be willing to sacrifice and be willing to do things you don't like. And Aang is the one person who's, and like, normally I hate that, like, oh, you can always find a third way to not have to make the hard choice. Aang is a character I want to be able to do that. And so yeah, it felt like I've seen some people be like, Bumi would never ever say that. And yeah, I think animated Bumi would never say the things he does, especially sure. like I really wanted him to say, you think like a child, and that's why you're great, never stop.
Right.
But that's not
not this Bumi.
Yeah.
That Bumi, I feel like, lived into his 100 teens because he had this childlike essence, right, at his core that he'd hung on to for his whole life, and a kind of like youthful interior that like maybe is part of the reason that his exterior persevered for so long. But like this Bumi feels like, no, he's like old and bitter, and like a lot of more of the things that I feel are like super stereotypical and like kind of ageist and whatever. And I mean, of course there's older people who are like that, and of course there's older people who aren't, and like they decided to go this way.
Right.
But he still has that essence in him. It's just it's 100 years of war.
Yeah.
But like
how many?
I think it was 100.
Okay. Yeah.
But it lets Aang actually like do a thing.
Yeah.
Which like I feel like he didn't do a lot of things in the earlier episodes, kind of, where it's like he gets to, much the way that Riki doesn't want him to help Iroh on his journey. Here, Bumi has a journey that doesn't really exist in the other version of Bumi.
Yeah.
Their Bumi is there to help Aang on his journey. Here, he's kind of thinks he's doing that, but it's the other way around. And Aang is like, I can trust my friends. They're right there. They just saved you.
And that's something we keep getting, right? Because it's the same thing happened on Kyoshi Island. Where it's like, like now that the Avatar's shown us the way, like we can rejoin the struggle.
Right.
Yeah. It's like they're all using like the same kind of language.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like the cart ride that the two of them go on at the end is very essential, because it shows that Bumi has gone, has progressed on the journey. The CGI of it was, but like, I was so happy when they did that,
for sure. That was necessary.
There were so many moments in that episode that just like, maybe it's fan service, but it made me so happy, especially when like they gave us Secret Tunnel, but it was a new verse. And I was like, and then they started to go, and I was like, are you not going to actually give it to it? And then they actually started singing Secret Tunnel.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna whisper this because Sarah's in the other room. I don't want her to hear me say this, but I'm not a fan of Secret Tunnel. Did that come through? Are you mad at me too now?
No, mostly I'm mad at myself that I haven't learned the video response, the video controls yet. Because if I'd been able to turn off your video immediately after you said that, it would have been fantastic. I don't have the love for it that a lot of other people do. I just like I've come to see it as a fun, essential moment in the show.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's like it's also definitely not my favorite. I'll say that,
uh-huh.
but like it was just funny. Like before the show came out, I was reading a book and it literally said "secret tunnel," and
Yeah.
because the show's coming up, like I had to hear it in that
Mhm.
those tones. And then we talked about it, like, yeah, they're probably not going to do Secret Tunnel, and then they do Secret Tunnel. It's like,
Well,
It
it
was
was
pretty
funny
perfect.
to me. So, like, coincidentally, I watched this or episode 4 with Sarah. Like, I watched the first 3 without her, but I watched this one with her, and I was kind of like bringing her up to speed. And I was like, "Yeah, this version is like a lot more dark." And then like it starts off with like some dark scene. Oh, because the Fire Nation scene, right? Like
Right.
the rebels. And it's like, oh yeah, it is dark. And then the intro starts, and the name of the episode was Into the Dark. I
right.
was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. I figured it. I liked it. All right.
Okay.
Anything else you guys want to say on this episode? Any last points or
Well,
questions we want
so
to bring up?
I mentioned Aang. I mentioned like I'm much higher on the Iroh character now, although I'm worried about the direction he's going. Like the portrayal and the performance is great.
Mm-hmm.
Aang, like I took a dip in these episodes, and I don't know much about ADR. I don't even remember what it stands for, but I just it's the when they
American
do
Dance Repertory?
no, it's like
It's like after dialogue recording. It's not
yeah,
after.
Oh, okay. Okay.
and I just something about the Aang performance and the way that the audio of his voice was syncing up just like gave me ADR vibes, and I feel like that may be kind of why I'm not digging the performance as
Yeah.
much.
Automated dialogue replacement.
Yeah, it's when they record the dialogue again, like afterwards in the studio, and and layer it over. And so I don't know if they're actually doing it, but it just something about it, something about his dialogue just like didn't sit right with me in this one.
I was reading something that apparently in some version, like the actor wasn't really enunciating his words quite as much. And so the director told him to really like over enunciate, which would feel like it really fits because I feel like that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
I have no idea how accurate that is. I read it on Twitter, so take it with major cartons of salt. But yeah, I feel like his physical motions are great. He looks the part. Is this Natalie Portman in the professional levels of kid acting? No. But is it, some of the very bad examples
Natalie
of kid
Portman
acting?
in Attack of the Clones? No.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Paul,
I
any
feel
stuff
the
from you?
same. Yeah. I mean, I also feel like I don't know how much of it's the delivery though, and how much of it's the dialogue. If it's like some of it's just like a little too on the nose and whatever. But also, Aang hasn't been top. Like maybe we should just do more backstory and just have him like chilling with Gyatso more. Because that worked.
Yeah.
That worked, but like some of these not as much. But I mean, obviously,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I know, like when we are being critical of performances, and especially child actor performances, like we have to be very clear these days as fans. Like, don't harass the performers, right?
I would say
B,
don't harass any performers of any age, but especially not kids.
for
yeah,
sure.
but B, like part of performance comes from experience, right? Like life experience or even just acting experience. And so when you said that, Paul, like that really like a light bulb went off for me. Like the Gyatso scenes, like that's a kid talking to his father figure and just like having a good time with his dad.
Yeah.
And so like it's understandable that he can give a good performance there because it's like, yeah, like that's what kids do. as the Avatar, like having to talk about responsibility in the world and war, like that type of dialogue may be more difficult for a child actor to deliver with the right gravitas, right?
For
And that's
sure.
understandable. And,
Yeah.
and so like I don't I'm critical of the performance because it's not meeting the standard of what I want, the show to be. But I think it's understandable that it might come off that way because of these reasons, and that's just kind of like a consequence that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just one of several reasons that I always thought that this story was just going to always be a difficult live action adaptation
Yeah.
because, the main protagonists are very young, and it's hard to act. It's just it takes it takes decades to learn a lot of crafts. And
Yeah.
acting, you can have a lot of natural talent, but it's like you can't have 20 years of experience when you're 15, right? That's not
Yeah.
Yeah,
math.
and the difficulty with this product specifically is that it's all kind of pre-written. Like they
Right.
can write different dialogue, but they have the story and they have
Yeah.
to tell the story.
Right.
And like I think about it, like I was just thinking about child actors right now, and it brought to mind Stranger Things.
Hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the brilliant things that show does is that it puts these like wild, supernatural world bending consequences, but then it had the actors talk about like D&D and
Yeah.
video
Yeah.
games and
Yeah.
Yeah.
like put it in reference to like Ghostbusters and stuff.
Right.
And so like that made those performances more natural and more believable because it was just like kids putting this like ridiculous thing that they're thrown into, but then relating it back to things that they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I'll also say, not in his defense, because I don't think either of you are attacking him by any means, but just one more thing, like, to speak to the talent of the kid who's playing Aang. If an actor is like any good at that age, I imagine it's because, among other things, like, they probably have been like, doing a lot of like child acting, in like school plays, or, mom's gotten them an acting coach or whatever. This is a kid who I understand has studied more martial arts than probably a lot of people do in their whole lives at the age of 12 or 13. And so, like, yeah, to me, he really has to have a double skill set that don't
Yeah.
many people don't necessarily have. I don't think many people are training in martial arts and starting in the school play very often. Um, so to me, like, the fact that he is like better than the average at both, and with one being significantly high, he's not my favorite performance that I could imagine from Aang, but there's nothing about it that's really pulling me out. I would say, especially, like, to me, the moments where it feels put out, it's because it feels so on the nose. And I agree with you, Paul. It may be the dialogue as much as anything there.
Yeah, and I mean, that speaks to another thing that makes this series difficult is like you have to staff almost your entire cast with martial artists, and
Yeah.
then you need them to be able to act,
Yeah.
and it's like I spent a lot of time learning martial arts. I didn't spend that time practicing acting. I got to do stunts in some horror movie where
Yeah.
I kicked a naked guy in the head, but like, I also got dropped on my head on concrete repeatedly, which I don't recommend. Like, I do not recommend. Anyway, but like, yeah, it's a lot. When you
Yeah.
see a 12-year-old who's like super good at martial arts, it's very impressive. And then if they're also even competent at something else, like, that's super impressive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree with that, and I think the physical performance is definitely there. And as I said in the last episode, I think he doesn't have to carry the show. He just has to exist and,
mhm.
and like be the through line of it, and that's okay. And meanwhile, on the other side, like I think Dallas Liu is a breakout from
Yeah,
this, like
Yeah.
so far. Like his I everything he's doing, like in the physical acting, the martial arts, and the acting, like I love Zuko in the original,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's going to be my takeaway here is that like this Zuko performance is going to be A plus.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you on that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more from him. And I think, I think Gordon Cormier, who's playing Aang, like, he's got time.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Aang needs to be more compelling in season 3 than in season 1.
Yeah, I agree
Like,
with that.
there's more weight. There's more,
Yeah.
like, the burden he carries gets larger as the series goes on, I think.
Mm.
And some of the decisions get tougher, and like, it's going to take them years to film the whole series, right? Assuming that they get season 2 and 3, and like, you can improve a lot. Like, if
Yeah.
you're spending time,
And,
working on your craft with other, like, world-class performers, like, you're going to get better.
yeah.
So,
Yes.
And
I have
Yeah.
some questions there.
and I also
And that
think, like, I think Aang hasn't been given that much to do so far.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
that too.
in the first half of, or the first like 3/4 of the first season of Avatar, the two main plot journeys he has is that he kind of wants to be whimsical and fun and isn't really ready to take on the responsibility that he has. And that at first he is really kind of arrogant, or not even arrogant, but just he loves being the star and he loves being adored by everyone. And
Vain, even, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
when everybody's, oh, hey, the Avatar.
And hey, look at me. And
Avatar.
frankly, I'm okay that, like, the first one we sort of circumvented. We talked about that yesterday, but the other one, like, I'm pretty okay with the fact that we don't have that at all. Like, so yeah, I agree though. I think we have a lot of time for Aang to do more, and we don't really need him to be a top level actor until further down.
Yeah.
So,
I
well, this
had
has been
one
go for it.
final thing. I had a random thought. We've been talking about 3 seasons. And I'm going to throw this out to you all to maybe think about, and we can come back to again later, and also to the audience. What do you think about the possibility that the live action show could go longer than 3 seasons?
Very likely.
Meaning specifically, well, 2 things possibly.
Okay.
Like spreading it out over seasons, right? Like the 3 seasons of animated, chopping up into 4 seasons of live action, let's say. Or showing more of the after the end of the series stuff that did happen, like, canonically in the comic books.
Yeah.
So, like, there is story written for what happens after.
From a pure, if they can do it right, I would absolutely love that. But I'm very concerned about it, and it's entirely due to the most recent season of Stranger Things. Because in Stranger Things, they cast a number of people to all play kids around the same age, but because puberty happens at different ages and kids age in different ways, those kids were actually, the actors were all different ages, because at the time they started shooting season 1, they all looked to be around the same age. By the time of season 4, they don't. And it really throws off the show, I think, in some very bad ways, that some of the actors have really hit their growth spurts and others haven't. And, if they can somehow, if you could look into the future of all those actors and be like, yeah, we know what it is, 100% sign me up. But I am very nervous about situations where, Aang, maybe he might, that Gordon might start aging in ways that makes him look older than everybody else. And you can do things with makeup and stuff, but I think it's definitely possible. But I think one of the dangers of having a bunch of kid actors over a long period of time is that the actors may well age at very different rates than the characters are supposed to, and that could be a problem. And granted, it's supposed to be now a longer show, not just 6 months, but it could become a thing.
I'll say, first of all, Stranger Things, it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's hilarious. I think because people age differently, like, I remember growing up and, like, I have a friend who looks older than me, and then I look older than them, Like, I grew 10 inches in a year. Like, and I remember people talking about, oh, the freshman looks so young this year. And I'm like 6 feet tall almost. And, like, looking down at this senior who's like 5'6". I'm like, okay. And, like, I understand that it feels weird. And I think if there's, like, romances and stuff, it probably feels more weird. But, like, I don't know. How people look, like, in terms of age, just, I feel like, I've got a lot of thoughts on it. We'll not delve deep into it, but like my thoughts are kind of like non-thoughts in a way.
Right.
I will say that one thing in Stranger Things that makes it so hilarious is that they deliberately hired younger looking adults to play the older teenagers who then remain being younger looking because it's just like sort of their bone structure or whatever. And then when the kids who were actually kids when they were cast grow up, they then look older than their younger than they look older than their older siblings.
Yes,
Which
exactly.
that's the thing that kind of seems weird. But sometimes that happens, you know?
Yeah.
Like that happens. That's a thing. But in terms of this series, I think if they stretch it out over more years, it like within the time frame of the show, instead of it being like a 6-month period or something, I think that will then be more credible and probably not such a big deal. I do think though that the stuff that happens after the end of the animated series, you could just say it happens some number of years later, and then everybody just looks older, and it's like that's not a big deal, I think.
Oh, I more mean if like season 2 of the animated becomes 2 seasons of live action.
No, I
so
know.
that it's so that if we're finishing
see.
the story of the first 3
Yeah.
of the 3 animated seasons in 5, so it's 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Is when we're having Child Aang, but now Child Aang looks like he can buy cigarettes or maybe even beer. That's when it's going to feel weird to me.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, if it looks like somebody's aged 6 years because the actor has in the course of like 2 weeks in the show. That happened in Lost, which we have at least 2 actors from Lost on this show already. There was a kid who then got written out of season 2 or 3 because he shot up like a foot, and because of however the production schedule is, they're like, no time was supposed to have taken place between season like 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, this kid looks like 5 years older than he did like literally a minute ago in the show. Like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
and they just
like,
wrote him out. And, it was
and like
weird.
you can use makeup and fashion and stuff like that, like to make an adult look like a teenager or make a like, but
I mean,
unless you bring in Peter Jackson, like making everyone look a foot smaller than they are.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Hollywood standard of having adults play teenagers is just ridiculous and always has been, and like kind of hilarious. But like, you know, but you just
have to have the women have bangs, because that's
right,
like the universal signifier of being younger.
Yeah. Give all the boys Padawan braids. No, don't do that. Never mind. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you both so much for being a part of this. To our listeners, thank you so much. As I said, there's lots of ways you can find us. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, email. Just go to our website. Would be great to have you, participate in social media. Let us know what you think. Share this with others. We really want more people to find the podcast, to be part of these conversations. We're definitely going to do some feedback episodes. We'll probably talk about the few things that have come in so far in just our upcoming episodes. We also might do a feedback episode, depending on how many we get. And again, you can become a member. It's the best way to support this podcast and my sister podcast, Star Wars Generations. $5 a month, $55 a year. You get all sorts of great bonus stuff, and it really is worth it. So please think about becoming a member. Please check out all of our social media. On behalf of myself, Riki, and Paul, thank you all so much. Secret tunnel.
I'm proud of you, sis. Driving cars is super hard.
Yep.